After the doctors told me I had 5 days to live, my young wife leaned over and whispered, "When you're gone, your $82 million will belong to me and my lover." I didn't argue. I quietly signed one document that turned her celebration into an investigation. "You're finally going to die, Jonathan. I'm so sick of pretending to love you." My wife's voice, 1 inch from my ear, soft as a lullaby. I had been drifting in the gray country between morphine and sleep, and for a second I decided I was dreaming, because in the dream version of my life, the version I'd been living for 4 years, Victoria did not sound like this. When I opened my eyes, she was leaning over the bed rail, 16 years younger than me, beautiful in the way hotel lobbies are beautiful, and she was smiling. Not the worried smile she gave the nurses. I knew that one by heart. This one was cold. "Those heart pills I brought you every night," she whispered. "They weren't keeping your heart going, sweetheart. They were shutting it down, little by little. And you never questioned a thing. You trusted me far too much." The monitor above my head stumbled, then sprinted. "Victoria, watch the numbers climb the way you watch a stock you own." Here is what I did in that moment. Because everything afterward, the document, the detective, the empty urn, depends on you believing me. Nothing. I lay in a bed I could not leave, in a body she had spent 7 months dismantling, and I cried. Not because I was dying. That morning, I'd already overheard my own doctor in the hallway say the words 5 days, maybe less, and I had made a kind of peace with it. I cried because 4 years of "I love you" had been a performance. Every word of it. Here is what Victoria didn't know, and wouldn't know for 11 more days. She was not the only performer in that room. She was just the only one who hadn't read the whole script. To understand how a 61-year-old man who measures things for a living failed to measure his own wife, I have to take you back. My name is Jonathan Mercer. For 34 years, I have owned Mercer Precision Components, a machine shop in Cleveland that grew into a factory that grew into a company that supplies parts to people who put other people in the air. We hold tolerances of 1/100th of a millimeter. The family business is doubt. Every part is presumed defective until a calibrated instrument says otherwise. I have fired good men for trusting their eyes. I tell you this so you understand the size of the joke. My first wife, Ellen, and I built the company out of a rented bay with a leaking roof. She ran the books at a card table for 6 years. We never had children. In 2016, ovarian cancer took her in 9 months, and I went back to work 11 days after the funeral because the silence in the house had a sound I could not stand. For 6 years, I was a rich man who ate dinner standing over the sink. Then, in the spring of 2022, my sister Ruth dragged me to a fundraiser at the Cleveland Museum of Art, and a woman in a green dress asked what I did. And when I said manufacturing, she didn't glaze over. She asked what could go wrong if we made it badly. She listened with her whole face. Her name was Victoria Ashford. She was 41, an interior designer with a small firm, and a laugh she aimed like a flashlight. And by the time the auction closed, I had hired her to redo the house in Shaker Heights that Ellen and I never got around to finishing. You can guess the middle part. She spent 4 months in my house choosing fabrics, and somewhere between the dining room and the study, she chose me. I know how that sounds now. It did not sound like anything then. It felt like a window opening in a room I'd forgotten was sealed. Ruth met her twice and called me the next morning. "She laughs half a second before your jokes land, Johnny," she said. "She's read the room. I'm not sure she's read the man." I told Ruth she was being unkind. We married in October of 2023, 10 months after our first dinner. No prenup. Samuel Thorne, my attorney of 12 years, slid a draft across his desk, and I slid it back. I told him, "You don't hand someone a contract that says I'm planning for the day you disappoint me." Samuel looked at me for a long moment and said, "Noted for the record." He kept the draft in his file. Samuel keeps everything. Remember that. For the first year, I will swear to my last day, it was real, or a counterfeit so exact the difference stops mattering. She learned my floor guys' names and brought Dale, my floor manager, banana bread when his wife had surgery. At Christmas, she gave me a restored 1968 Starrett micrometer in a walnut box, and I had to leave the room because Ellen had bought me my first one at a pawn shop in 1989. 2 details from that first year matter later, so I'll flag them now, the way I wish someone had flagged them for me. 1. Victoria had done 2 years of nursing school in her 20s before switching to design. She mentioned it charmingly at parties as a joke about her steady hands. "I can hang a chandelier and start an IV," she'd say. "Marry me for the emergencies." 2. At a Memorial Day cookout in 2024, she introduced me to an old friend from those nursing school days. Raymond Cole, mid-40s, tan, easy. A registered nurse working at Harbor Light Hospice out in Westlake. He taught me a trick with the grill vents and complimented my lawn. I liked him. I want that on the record too. I shook the man's hand over a plate of ribs, and I liked him. In January of 2025, I got dizzy walking the floor, and my heart did something in my chest like a machine throwing a belt. My cardiologist, Dr. Priya Nair, 18 years in practice, a woman who delivers bad news the way controllers read flight numbers, diagnosed atrial fibrillation. Common at my age. Manageable. She put me on metoprolol for the rhythm and apixaban to prevent clots, told me to lose 15 pounds, and sent me home. Victoria cried in the car. Then she appointed herself my pharmacy. She bought a brushed steel pill organizer with a compartment for every day, and refilled it each Sunday night at the kitchen island, her reading glasses on, cross-checking a little notebook. It became a ritual. She'd bring my pills at 10 with a glass of water and stand there while I took them, and then she'd kiss the top of my head. She was the only person alive alive allowed to do that, and say, "One more day with you. That's all I'm buying. One day at a time." I thought it was the most loving thing anyone had done for me since Ellen died. She also added a supplement, Cardio Calm Magnesium Complex, a white bottle with a blue heart on the label. Ray had recommended it, she said. Half his hospice patients were on magnesium. It was practically water, but it helped the rhythm. It came from some online wellness store, 2 bottles at a time. It was, she said, the one thing in the organizer that was pure insurance. I took it every night for 7 months. Every single night holding her hand, I swallowed it. The first thing I noticed was the light. It was late February, driving home on Chagrin Boulevard after a supplier dinner, and every street light had a ring around it, faint, yellow-green, like a gas flame seen through fog. I told myself it was the windshield and Windexed it in my garage at 11 at night, and the next evening the rings were still there. So I stopped driving after dark and told no one, because men like me treat symptoms as scheduling problems. Then the tiredness came, and it was gravitational. I started closing my office door at 2 and putting my head on the desk like a kindergartner. Food went metallic. A low-grade nausea hovered around meals. I dropped 9 pounds without trying, and Victoria said the diet was working, and I let her say it. In March, Dr. Nair ran labs and a 48-hour monitor. The results, she said, were unremarkable. My rhythm was actually holding. "Whatever this is," she told me, "it isn't your heart misbehaving in any way I can see." I remember being relieved. I want you to sit with that. The tests couldn't find it, so I decided it wasn't there. In my shop, if a part passes inspection but the assembly keeps failing, we don't shrug. We assume the inspection is measuring the wrong thing. I know that in my bones at work. At home, I took the clean labs like a verdict because Victoria squeezed my hand when Dr. Nair said, "Unremarkable," and her eyes went wet. And on the drive home, she said, "I can't lose you. I'm not built for it," and stared out the window like the possibility was chasing the car. She came to every appointment after that. She answered the intake questions before I could. She knew my medication list cold better than I did, and the nurses adored her. I told myself it was devotion. Rich men get to tell themselves a lot of things. In May, I spent 5 days in Erie at a supplier's plant, alone. Victoria was in Columbus that week helping her mother recover from a knee replacement, or so the story went, and when I packed, I couldn't find the Cardio Calm. It didn't live in the medicine cabinet with everything else. It lived in her vanity, which struck me as odd for exactly 1 second, and then I decided a heart supplement was not worth calling her about and went to Erie with my prescriptions and nothing else. By the 3rd day, I felt 10 years younger. I noticed it in my hands first. There's a stillness you need on a micrometer thimble, and mine had been quietly degrading for months. I'd been handing the instrument to younger men and calling it delegating. In Erie, my hands were steady as a Tuesday. I ate a full plate of Hirsch and wanted more, and realized I hadn't thought about my body all day, which is the definition of health. I drove home on Friday. Sunday night, the ritual resumed. The organizer, the water, the kiss on my head. By Tuesday, the gravity was back. By Thursday, the rings were around the streetlights again. I did the thing you're screaming at me to do. I said it out loud. We were in the kitchen and I said, "You know, I felt better in Erie. Genuinely better. Isn't that strange? I even missed a few of the supplements and felt better." Victoria didn't pause. That's the detail I go back to. She was slicing a pear and the rhythm of it never changed. "Magnesium's like that," she said. "You feel fine off it for a few days while your levels coast and then you crash. Ask Ray. People quit it feeling great and end up in the ER a month later." She pointed the pear slice at me. "You're not quitting." She had 2 years of nursing school. I had a feeling and a pear slice held out with love. I ate it out of her hand, and that night I swallowed the capsule, and my body, which had been telling me the truth for months in the only language it had, gave up trying for a while. I told myself it was nothing. I build parts for machines that fall out of the sky if I'm wrong by 1/100th of a millimeter, and I told myself it was nothing. The money noticed before I did. Money always does. In June, doing my quarterly pass through the household accounts, I found a $40,000 wire to something called Meridian Coastal Escrow LLC. I asked Victoria about it at dinner, casually, the way you ask about a charge you assume is a mix-up. Her face did something complicated and landed on hurt. "It was supposed to be a surprise," she said. "A rental in Malibu for your birthday. A refundable hold. You've been so sick and I thought, ocean air, no factory, just us." Her eyes filled. "And now you've ruined it. And worse, you asked me like an auditor." I apologized. "I am telling you the whole truth in this account, including the parts that make me want to walk into Lake Erie. The woman who was poisoning me caught me reviewing her wire transfers, and within 4 minutes, I was the one apologizing, and she let me spend the rest of the evening making it up to her. 3 weeks later, her iPad was open on the kitchen counter while she showered, and the screen woke when I moved it to wipe a coffee ring. A saved search. Malibu. $4 million to $6 million, 3 results flagged. A note in the corner of one listing in her tidy designer's hand via some annotation app. R likes the Carbon Beach one. R, her realtor, I decided. On a rental hold with a refundable deposit, browsing $6 million purchases. I stood in my kitchen and performed the mental machining required to make that make sense. And I am ashamed to say the part passed my inspection because the inspector wanted it to. And one time, at Giovanni's in July, her bag tipped on the banquette and I saw a second phone. Slim, black, nothing like her rose gold everything. Her hand moved before my eyes finished focusing. "Work phone," she said. "Clients text at 2 a.m. about grout. You have your world, I have mine." She smiled and ordered for us both. Strange detail. Rationalization. My stomach dropping through a restaurant floor while I knotted and buttered bread. If the pattern is obvious to you, good. It was obvious to everyone but the man inside it, because the man inside it had swallowed the premise whole. She loves me. Run every anomaly through that fixture and the parts keep passing. By August, I had lost 19 pounds, and my signature, I sign a lot of things, had gone from block print to seismograph. On September 12th, I went to the garage for a socket set and came back to consciousness on the concrete with 40 minutes gone, and told no one, because I had a board meeting on the 14th, a shipment on the 16th, and because somewhere below thought I was afraid of what a doctor would find, which is the most human sentence in this story. On September 18th, at 9:12 in the morning, I collapsed on my own factory floor in front of 11 employees, mid-sentence, 6 feet from Dale, who has worked for me for 22 years. He rode in the ambulance. He kept saying, "Boss, squeeze my hand." I remember the ceiling of the ambulance and the sound of his voice and thinking, with the strange bookkeeping of a fading mind, that I hadn't updated my will since Ellen. Hold that thought. Everything hangs on it. Lakeview Memorial admitted me that morning, and the next 12 days were a long escalator going down. Echocardiograms, catheterization, my ejection fraction, the number that tells you what fraction of a functioning heart you still own, read like a countdown. Dr. Nair brought in colleagues. The word they used in front of me was idiopathic, which is Latin for we can see the building burning and cannot find the fire. My rhythm kept doing ugly things on the monitor at 3 a.m. and setting off alarms, and nurses would materialize. And Victoria was magnificent. She was there every day from 9 to 9, kept a cashmere throw on the recliner and a list of my doctor's coffee orders, and the nurses' station loved her. And every night around 10, she would draw the curtain, take a little zip bag from her purse, and shake out my pills, the real ones, and the white capsule with the blue heart bottle at home. "Hospital food is stripping you, baby," she'd whisper, conspiratorial, warm. "Don't tell Nurse Simmons. They get weird about outside supplements." And she would hold the water cup, and I would swallow, and she would smooth my blanket and tell me one more day at a time. I swallowed them. In a cardiac unit, under telemetry, with the Fire Department of American Medicine standing 6 feet away, I swallowed what she handed me every night, because the fixture said she loves me, and I had never once recalibrated it. There was one other person in that hospital who talked to me like I was a man and not a chart. An orderly, 25, with dark circles like bruised fruit under his eyes, who moved through the ward doing the work nobody thanks anyone for. He'd fix the blanket without being asked and actually look at you. I heard 2 nurses at the station talking about him one afternoon, that he worked doubles here and loaded trucks at night, all for a 14-year-old sister born with a failing heart, that her surgery ran $2.4 million, a number his family would never see in 3 lifetimes. One nurse called it the saddest thing in the building. The other said the saddest thing in the building changes daily. His badge said, Lucas B. On the morning of my 4th day, an aide wheeled me back from an echo, and the transport paused in the hallway while somebody moved a cart, and 8 feet away, around a supply alcove, Dr. Nair was talking to a resident in the low, flat voice doctors use when they believe no patient can hear. "Transplants off the table at this EF, and he's not a device candidate with that rhythm," she said. "Realistically, 5 days, maybe less. Get palliative looped in today, and let me be the one who tells the wife." The cart moved. The aide wheeled me on. I watched the ceiling tiles go by, one seam at a time, like mile markers. 5 days, maybe less. I spent that afternoon doing the arithmetic of a life. It comes out faster than you'd think. And around 8 that evening, I asked the aide to dig my phone out of the drawer, and I opened the voice memo app because I wanted to leave Victoria a message for after. A real one. My voice, not a lawyer's paper. I got about 40 seconds in. "Vic, if you're hearing this," and then my throat closed and I set the phone down on the blanket against my leg, still recording, telling myself I'd start over in a minute, and the morphine pump did its quiet work, and I went under with the little red counter running. "You already know what I woke to. You're finally going to die, Jonathan. I'm so sick of pretending to love you. You know about the smile and the pills and the monitor sprinting. Here's the rest of that visit, the part I've never been able to say out loud, so I'm writing it instead." I tried to speak. What came out was a dry rasp, a sound like paper tearing. "Don't strain yourself," she said. "Raymond and I already picked out a house in Malibu. Your factory, your condos, your $82 million. You worked like a dog your whole life, and we're going to enjoy every cent of it. Raymond, the grill vents, the plate of ribs. Ask Ray. R likes the carbon beach one." 7 months of machining tolerance out of my heart, and the schematic had been on her iPad the whole time, initialed. The monitor stumbled, then sped up, and she glanced at it with mild professional interest. 2 years of nursing school, steady hands, and took out a small mirror and touched up her lipstick. Unhurried, a woman with nowhere urgent to be. "The funeral will be short," she added, capping the lipstick. "Why waste good money on a dead man when I have a new Porsche to buy?" Then she walked out. Her heels went down the hall at a relaxed tempo, and the door sighed shut, and I lay there staring at the ceiling while the tears ran sideways into my ears. And against my leg, under the blanket, warm from my own failing body, my phone was still recording. It took me 20 minutes to get my breathing level enough to lift the phone. The voice memo app had been running for 1 hour, 14 minutes, 6 seconds. It had named the file New Recording 47. 46 times in my life, I had recorded a thought worth keeping. The 47th was my wife at whisper distance, narrating my own slow ending back to me with the pills, the name, the Malibu house, house, the Porsche. I played 11 seconds at the lowest volume, her voice tinny and precise, and stopped because my monitor was starting to object and I could not afford the nurses yet. Something happened in the next hour that I can only describe mechanically, because that is the animal I am. Grief is a load, rage is a load. A part under load deforms, unless the load path is redirected into structure. Lying there, I felt the crushing weight slide, notch by notch, out of my chest and into something with a thread pitch and a torque spec. She had given me the one thing she should never have given a dying machinist, a recording and 5 days to build with it. At a few minutes past 9, the door opened and the orderly with the bruised fruit eyes slipped in for evening rounds, moving quiet the way people learn to when half their patients are asleep and the other half wish they were. "Evening, Mr. Mercer," he said, fixing the blanket. "Want some water?" "Come closer," I rasped. "I have a proposal." He frowned. He glanced at the monitor, then the door. 25 years old and already fluent in the ways trouble enters a room. "Sir, if this is something illegal, that's exactly why I chose you." I unlocked my phone with a thumb that shook like a struck tuning fork and turned the screen to him. Bank accounts, property deeds, the brokerage portfolio. I scrolled slowly so he could see it was real. All of it. The whole absurd number a man accrues by being good at one thing for 4 decades. "Call my attorney. Tomorrow morning, I'm changing my will. Everything goes to you." Lucas stepped back like the floor had tilted. "Mr. Mercer, I don't even know you." "I know you," I said. "You haul trash 16 hours a day to keep your sister alive. My wife is murdering me for a beach house. Tell me which one of us has family that deserves my life's work." The room did that thing hospital rooms do at night, where the machines breathe and the humans don't. He checked my eyes for morphine, for delirium, for the cruelty of a rich man's joke, and found none of it. And I watched the mathematics of a $2.4 million surgery move behind his face like weather. He didn't say yes. That mattered later, when people asked. He never said yes. Then Lucas pulled out his phone. He dialed the number I recited from memory, and at 9:58 p.m., Samuel Thorne answered on the second ring, the way he has for 12 years, and I said, "Sam, bring the file with my name on it, all of it, and come dressed like a doctor." At 10 the next morning, a man in a white lab coat walked in carrying a leather portfolio, looking like one more specialist come to shake his head at my chart. The coat came from a uniform store on Lorraine Avenue at 8:40 a.m., must because word could not reach the 9th floor's most beloved visitor that her dying husband had counsel. Under it, a $2,000 suit. Samuel Thorne, 12 years my attorney, the calmest man I have ever paid. What happened in the next 90 minutes was boring on purpose. Revenge, it turns out, is mostly paperwork done correctly. Dr. Alan Raisman, staff psychiatrist, 19 years at Lakeview, examined me and stated on camera that I was lucid and possessed of testamentary capacity, that I understood my property, my beneficiaries, and the nature of my act. I executed a new last will and testament revoking all priors. 2 witnesses signed, Roberta Simmons, charge nurse, 22 years on that floor, and a hospital notary named Danielle Okafor. Everything my life had built, the factory, the condos on 9th, the accounts, all of it, to Mr. Lucas Bennett, orderly of Parma, Ohio. Samuel raised one eyebrow exactly once, at the name, and finished the sentence he was writing. That was the document. One document. The title of this story says it turned her celebration into an investigation, and it did, but not the way I planned that morning, because that morning I was still a dying man swinging one clean punch on his way down. I thought the will was the whole weapon. I thought I had 5 days, and this was what justice looks like when that's all the runway you have. She would bury me, reach for the money, and grab a live wire in front of lawyers. Then the room cleared, and Samuel folded his stolen lab coat over a chair and looked at me the way he looked at me the day I refused the prenup. 12 years, Jonathan, he said. You have never once made a move this size with the reasons showing. A dying man rewrites his will for a stranger. That's a story. You don't do stories. Give me the real reason. So I picked up my phone, and I played him 1 hour, 14 minutes, and 6 seconds. Samuel Thorne bills at $700 an hour, and I have personally watched him stay silent through a deposition where a man called him a vulture to his face. He listened to the whole recording standing up, without moving, and when Victoria's voice said the word Portia, he closed his eyes for exactly one breath. Then he opened them, and he was someone slightly different than the man I'd known for 12 years. Or exactly the same man, finally given a load rated for his full capacity. Jonathan, he said, this stopped being estate planning about an hour ago. With your permission, I am going to make 2 phone calls, and your 5 days are going to get very crowded. Who's the first call? Your doctor. Because if what's on that recording is true, then nobody in this building has been treating your actual disease. He was already dialing. The second is a detective named Dana Reyes, and God help your wife. By 3:15 that afternoon, I had a diagnosis for the first time in 7 months. It took 1 blood draw and 1 question nobody had thought to ask, because you do not test a man for a drug he has never been prescribed. Digoxin, an old heart medication, respectable in the right hands, ruinous in the wrong dose. Therapeutic level, under 2. Mine came back 6.4, a number that made the lab call the floor, and the floor called Dr. Nair, and Dr. Nair walk into my room and stand at the foot of my bed with my chart against her chest like a shield. 7 months, she said quietly. The halos, the nausea, the rhythm strips. I have been trying to solve a heart that was being sabotaged upstream of every test I ran. She does not apologize for things that are not her fault, and she didn't. She said, the antidote is digoxin Immune Fab. It binds the drug so your body can clear it. First dose hangs within the hour. I can't promise you back what 7 months took. I can promise it stops tonight. The toxicologist she brought in, Dr. Aaron Feld, put it differently. He held up the little zip bag Nurse Simmons had quietly collected from my bedside drawer, 2 innocent-looking white capsules Victoria had left for tonight, and said, "We'll confirm with the lab, but I've been doing this 20 years, and hand-filled capsules of somebody else's digoxin is not a supplement. It's a schedule." Detective Dana Reyes arrived at 16 years with Cleveland Division of Police, the last 9 in major case. Gray at her temples, a legal pad half-filled. She listened to the recording twice with her eyes closed, asked me 40 minutes of questions in the flattest, kindest voice I've ever heard, and then said the sentence that split my life in two. "Mr. Mercer, we could arrest her tonight. I don't think we should, and I need you clear-eyed about why." An assistant county prosecutor named Elaine Prosser joined by phone, and the two of them laid it out like a shop drawing. Ohio is a one-party consent state. My recording was legal, admissible, and alone survivable for a good defense attorney. A wife's monstrous venting at a comatose husband. The capsules in the drawer. My prints, chain of custody starting at 0. And Raymond Cole, the likely source of pharmaceutical-grade digoxin, a hospice nurse with access to it by the drawerful, was at that moment nothing but a first name on a recording and an initial on a Zillow note. "If we take her tonight, we get her on the tape and hope," Reyes said. "If you can give us a few days, we take her on evidence a jury can hold in their hands. But those days cost you, and I won't pretend otherwise. She keeps visiting. She keeps handing you capsules, and you keep smiling at her. I run a factory. Controlled process is my religion. I signed the consent forms, all of them, the recordings, the room camera, the medical coordination, and asked what my line was. My line was, nothing. Play the man she believed she'd already finished. So we built it. A camera the size of a deck of cards went above the room's television, and my nightly outside supplements routine became a monitored evidence protocol. And for 4 consecutive nights, my wife drew the curtain, took the zip bag from her purse, shook 2 white capsules into my palm, held the water, and watched me swallow. And 4 consecutive nights, I didn't. There is a way to hold a capsule high against the back gum and drink around it that I practiced with Nurse Simmons using Tic Tacs until my hands stopped shaking. The moment Victoria's heels faded, an evidence technician named Officer Tran stepped out of my bathroom with gloves and a sealed bag and a time-stamped label. 4 nights, 8 capsules. The lab put the contents between 0.5 and 0. 75 milligrams of crushed digoxin apiece, a maintenance dose of death, administered with a glass of water and a smile. On the second night, she came early, and Tran spent 40 minutes in my bathroom, and Victoria complained to the desk that housekeeping was getting lazy. On the 4th night, she brought a second dose for strength and sat on the edge of my bed studying my face with those steady nursing school eyes and said softly, "You're such a fighter, baby, but it's okay to rest now. It's okay to let go." I looked at the woman I married and performed the hardest engineering of my life. I let my eyes fill, and I squeezed her hand, and I whispered thank you. Meanwhile, Prosser's people pulled a thread I hadn't known existed. 26 months earlier, 6 weeks after our honeymoon photos came back from the printer, Victoria had taken out a life insurance policy on me through Cornerstone Mutual. $3 million. Sole owner, sole beneficiary, premiums paid from her design firm's account. You want a definition of premeditation a jury can hold? It has a policy number. And then, before dawn on the 6th day after I signed the will, my heart stopped for real. I don't remember it. I remember the ceiling tiles going soft around 4:50 a.m., and then I remember Tuesday. The digoxin was leaving my blood, but it had spent 7 months remodeling the muscle, and at 4:53, the rhythm collapsed, and a code team spent 11 minutes getting me back. That's what I'm told. 11 minutes. At 5:40 a.m., with me stabilized in the ICU and a unit clerk on the floor who played tennis with Victoria's friends, Detective Reyes made the call she'd been holding in reserve, and Prosser approved it from her kitchen, and the operation's final phase started early, improvised, the way real things do. At 6:20 a.m., Nurse Simmons, with Reyes on the muted line beside her, every word consented and recorded, called my wife, and in her gentle 22-year voice, told Victoria Mercer that her husband was gone. I have heard the recording. Victoria listens. She says, "I see." She asks, this is verbatim, whether she needs to come in this morning or whether the paperwork can be afternoon. She hangs up. What happened on the other side of that hang-up? I know because Raymond Cole described it under oath 11 months later, word for word, at his plea hearing, with my whole factory's front office in the gallery. He was beside her in my bed. She set the phone down and she laughed out loud. A real laugh, he testified, like she'd won something on a game show. And she said, "It's done," and sent him downstairs for the Veuve Clicquot they'd been saving in my refrigerator. It was 6:24 in the morning, and my wife was pouring champagne for 2, and across town a machine was breathing for me while I slept off my own resurrection. When Reyes played me that call later that week, I discovered you can know a thing is theater and still feel it land. I asked her to play it twice. She understood why. Somewhere in the second listening, the last soft heart of me finished curing into something harder, and I have never gotten it back, and I have decided that's the fee. The week I spent dead was the most documented week of Victoria's life. She called Delgado & Sons before noon that first day and ordered direct cremation, the cheapest package on the sheet, no viewing, no embalming, and asked, per the funeral director's notes, later read to the grand jury, whether there was a discount for paying same day. She believed she was saving money. Prosser believed correctly that she was destroying the evidence inside my body and wrote it up as consciousness of guilt. The cremation was confirmed to her in writing. It did not occur for the excellent reason that I was 2 floors up in the ICU under the name Gerald Whitfield, on a security hold admission, watching my own numbers improve. On day 2, she notified Cornerstone Mutual of my passing and asked, recorded one party consenting, whether the claim could be expedited because, quote, I have a closing. Carbon Beach. On day 1, a poll camera watched Raymond Cole's Tacoma settle into my driveway like it had always lived there. The memorial was Thursday, and it was short, exactly as promised. I watched it on the funeral home's live stream from a hospital bed, with Reyes in the chair beside me taking notes. My wife stood under a black veil and dabbed at dry eyes while my factory managers filed past the cheapest urn in the catalog, an urn holding nothing but air and a rental fee. Dale wore his union pin and wept, and I will spend the rest of my life making that week up to him and to my sister Ruth, who sat in the second row twisting a tissue into rope, grieving a man who was watching her on a phone screen and could not tell her. And near the back, holding his work jacket like a hymnal, stood Lucas Bennett. Nobody sent him. He came on his own, off a night shift, to stand for a patient. On the stream, I watched Victoria's veiled head turn toward him and stop, and for one strange second, her hand went white around her clutch. Then she turned away, and you could see her decide it was nothing. 1 week later came the reading of the will. Samuel staged it in the long conference room at his firm, 34 floors over Cleveland, and every chair had an assignment. Lucas was already seated when Victoria arrived in a designer black dress with Raymond on one arm and a $900 an hour probate litigator named Preston Vale on the other. She stopped in the doorway when she saw Lucas. What is the help doing here? Nobody answered her. Samuel opened a red leather binder and read aloud, by directive of Jonathan Mercer, executed 6 days before his passing, the entirety of his estate, the factory, the properties, the accounts, all $82.3 million, passes exclusively to Mr. Lucas Bennett. The room went silent in that pressurized way rooms do before they fail. Then Victoria came out of her chair. To an orderly, she slammed both hands on the table. I am his wife. He was out of his mind. I will bury all of you in court. Vale opened his briefcase. Samuel didn't blink. There is one more item. Jonathan insisted you hear it in person. He pressed a button on the console, and my wife's own voice filled the room. You're finally going to die, Jonathan. I'm so sick of pretending to love you. The recording ran on. The pills, little by little, you trusted me far too much, and nobody moved, and somewhere around the word Porsche, Preston Vale quietly closed his briefcase, which remains the single most eloquent act of lawyering I have ever witnessed. Then the side door opened, and Lucas stood up, the way you stand for a boss or a friend. He had asked to be the one pushing the chair, and I rolled into the conference room in a suit I'd insisted on, with an oxygen line under my collar, and a tie it had taken me 9 minutes to knot alive. I have replayed her face many times. It didn't crumble. It cycled through the nurse's smile, the hurt wife, the auditor's wife, the widow, searching for the mask rated for this load, and there wasn't one, and what was left underneath was just arithmetic, failing. Hello, Victoria, I said. You were right. I trusted you far too much. The main door opened behind her, and Detective Dana Reyes came through it with 2 officers and 16 years of patience, reciting attempted aggravated murder, 4 counts, conspiracy, insurance fraud, tampering with evidence. Raymond went for the exit and made it as far as the reception ficus, where Officer Tran happened to be standing. The last thing Victoria said to me as the elevator closed was that I was already dead. My cardiologist disagrees. They never got their trial. Against 8 capsules with pristine chain of custody, a 6.4 blood level, the Cornerstone recordings, and 1 hour, 14 minutes, 6 seconds of her own voice, Victoria pleaded. 21 years at the Ohio Reformatory for Women in Marysville. Raymond took 9, cooperated fully, and lost his license. The audit he triggered found 340 tablets missing from Harbor Light's returns bin over 3 years, and an entire hospice changed its controls because of what he siphoned out of dead patients' leftovers. The divorce took 11 minutes. Cornerstone voided the policy. Meridian Coastal returned the escrow. Ruth yelled at me for 20 straight minutes for letting her grieve. Then she brought a casserole. We do not discuss the 20 minutes. Chloe Bennett had her surgery in October at the clinic. Paid from a trust Samuel built quietly during the week I was dead, so no one watching my accounts would see it move. I waited down the hall. Lucas came out and couldn't speak, so he just nodded. And I have been paid in full for my entire life. She sends me drawings now. Hearts. Anatomically labeled. She wants Dr. Nair's job. Dr. Pao Nair says the position will be available and the candidate is annoyingly qualified. Lucas starts nursing school in January. He still works weekends at Lakeview because, he says, somebody has to fix the blankets. Samuel asked if I wanted to revise the will, now that I'm inconveniently alive. I told him to leave every word. My ejection fraction is 49 and climbing. I'm at the factory 3 days a week, and my hands are steady on the micrometer again, and 2 letters have come from Marysville that I have not opened. Maybe that's its own answer. In my shop, we live by one rule. Every part is presumed defective until a calibrated instrument proves otherwise. For 4 years, I made a single exception, and it nearly ran the line off a cliff. People ask if the lesson is to stop trusting. It isn't. The night everything ended, I handed my whole life to a stranger in a hospital room, on nothing but the evidence of who he was when he he thought no one important was watching, and that reading has held true ever since, to the 100th of a millimeter. She measured wrong, that's all. She had 5 days to spend, and she spent them on lipstick and listings. I spent mine on a signature.